What's up, everybody? Renfail here, back with more Avowed stuff to talk about and go through because this is going to be an awesome game. I can't wait. And Dropped Frames just had Carrie Patel, the creative director, on their show, the game director for Avowed, on their show, doing an interview with her. I haven't watched it yet. We're going to go watch it, react to it, and then we're going to talk in a follow-up video, which I've already got slotted in. We're going to be talking about should you play the first two Pillars of Eternity games before Avowed comes out? Hint, the answer is yes, but we're going to go into that more in greater detail in another video, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, let's go watch this together over at Drop Frames. It's bound to be something fun. I think that everything that Obsidian is putting together right now with Avowed, it looks amazing. The showcase they did at Direct was incredibly cool. Carrie Patel seems like a really down-to-earth, awesome game director, and so it's genuinely a pleasure when I get to see her talk about the game because it's like I just feel like she's one of us, and gets it. And like, I mean, Obsidian just puts out really good games anyway. I've always loved their games. I've never been disappointed. I love the Pillars of Eternity series. I don't want to rant too much this morning on that because that's going to be in the other video where I talk for 45 minutes probably. So let's just go watch this. I don't think it's too long. It looks like it might be. Um, I don't know. This is 2:47. We're starting at 2:19. That's 30 minutes maybe. If I could do math off the top of my head, 20 minutes. 20-ish minutes it looks like. I can't do math. Let's go.
I it's going to be very memorable.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, we didn't know this was going to be a thing. Sorry to just bring that on you
I
here
love it.
at the start of it. It was also fun watching a live audience member, our first maybe on the show, respond to the bullshittery that we were saying. So thank you for that. I was watching in the camera as we were discussing whatever we were just discussing. But anyways, our time is short. Let's talk Avowed. It's been 2 weeks, I think, since that Xbox event where you guys were finally able to kind of peel back the veil
And
of
it
the
looks
game. And
so
since then,
good.
you've kind of been on like a media tour, as it were, if there is such a thing in games these days. And you've got to see the community kind of respond to the game and even respond to some of those community comments and posts and whatnot. How are you finding that whole process so far? How has like the unveiling been for you and the team at large?
Yeah, it's been great. It's the funny thing about game development is you spend so much time working quietly on something, and for a few years it's your day in, your day out, what your focus is. And then there are kind of these little moments when finally you can start to talk about it, start to share your progress. And the
Can
thing
I
that's
say I love
always
the
that's
fact
always
that she uses
exciting
a
right
headset?
now is
I
we
just
showed something
I'm a
for
headset guy. I love it.
showcase last June.
Mm.
We showed a little
Like
bit
with a
more at
mic, you know what I
Developer
mean?
Direct a couple weeks ago, as you mentioned. So we're getting to share more and more. But all of that is while the game is still in progress, obviously. And so it's one of the heartening things has been seeing fans call out some of the things that we are actively working on,
Oh, that looks
like
good.
the sense of hitting and impacts as you're attacking enemies. It's like, yep, what y'all saw was still a few weeks behind where we were, even when that footage was released, just because of the nature of the way these things are put together. And the team's been
We're on
working
it.
on it. So it's kind of nice to
Polish.
say, like,
It's
yep,
polish.
they
I'm gonna
saw it.
pause here
We
real
know it.
quick here.
Trust
It
us. We're
this is one of the issues whenever you do any sort of like footage that is a few months behind your current build, because that's what you had the chance to polish and get ready for a press tour, because they are still technically in just polish phase for the next, however many months until release happens. Um, so that's normal, but I love the fact that she's addressing it because that was one of the only things I saw was people complaining about. I don't like the way the animations look when you land an attack. It should be more this, that, or the other. And it's like that's a fair criticism, but it's also cool that she has the answer ready for that, being like, it's polished. Like just, yep.
working on it.
Are there members of the team when that happens and you get to go and read all the different comments? Are there members of the team that bring it to a meeting of just saying like, "See, I told you," like that's what they're saying? Does that happen like internally where you guys are able to use that as collaborative feedback for the game?
it's definitely a point of discussion. You know, like if, and you've got people who, you know, follow that sort of commentary a lot more closely, people who tend to be a little bit less
Dual wielding
engaged with that.
wizard.
But yeah, I mean, we've definitely got enough people who follow that stuff closely enough that, you know, if there's something that's coming up a lot in commentary, we're probably talking about it internally.
Yeah.
Sure, sure, that makes sense. Co, I know you've been following Avowed since like the second it was announced. You can't stop talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let you kind of
Yes.
lead the rest of the discussion here because you have a bunch of different questions to ask. So please go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So first of all, Carrie, thank you for so much for coming on today. This has been it's amazing being able to talk to you about this stuff. I know many of my community are diehard Obsidian fans, and actually, you know what?
I'm a
Let's just
diehard
get right
fan
into
for
it.
sure.
So one of the reasons we're Obsidian fans is because you guys have had a lot of phenomenal games over the years. When I am asked what my favorite CRPGs are, when it comes to like story, one of the first ones I always say is Pillars of Eternity 1. Like that was one of
That's
those games that
amazing.
showed me just how amazing stories can be delivered through this medium. So for players like me, for us that, you know, we'd love to see a PoE 3, but Avowed comes out and then we hear, oh man, it's in Eora. Like, this is incredible. What is this game going to do outside of the location for people like me that like we have hundreds of hours
Mm-hmm.
in Eora in the CRPG? What is going to translate into Avowed for us?
That's a very good question.
So one of the things that I
What
think was
carries over?
really distinct about Pillars of Eternity 1 and Deadfire, just in terms of, you know,
Deadfire, it's so good.
the way we frame the player's role in the world. Like with all of our games, I think we try to leave what we think of as a player-shaped hole at the center of the experience, where it's like,
That's
yes, we have a
interesting.
central premise, we have some conflicts we're
That's a
putting
cool way
you
to
into,
describe it.
we have situations that we're dropping you into to navigate. You know, but the core of choice and consequence for us is about letting players express who they are in this world, navigate complicated and nuanced choices. You know, oftentimes there are not easy or predictably easy, you know, right and wrong answers, which is one of the things I you know, really love about this style of game. So there's certainly that, but you know, I think something that returning Pillars fans will definitely recognize is the idea that you have this this very grounded political story,
Yeah.
you know, where factions and nations and people, you know, operate within, I guess, kind of like a real politic framework, and alongside that is
It's the
this much
world
more
lore.
is this very thoughtful metaphysical story of the gods and souls and, you know, kind of these deeper, slightly more abstract topics. And in all of the Pillars of Eternity games, including Avowed, you have both of these stories running in parallel, and you have a player character who is right between them with a foot in each of these worlds, that sort of explains why they are uniquely able to influence events, why their choices matter so much for the outcome of the world, and it kind of gives them these two very interesting vectors to play
You're
off of as
not,
they're
yeah, see,
defining their place
I'm
in
going
the
to pause
setting. And
here. It's not that you're the prophesied one, because that's a trope that many other games do. It is more along the lines of, as she's mentioned in the first two games, and again, I don't want to ramble about it too much here because I'm going to save that for the other video. You have these two very well-defined games that came before, which established these political regimes and these spiritual regimes and this backstory of the gods and the souls and the Angwithians and everything else that has come, and taking that and just molding that story to say this is how it was in the two areas you explored before. These were the political alliances and religious, aspects of the first game. We're going to take those, transpose them into number two. It's bigger, better, different because it's a different part of the world. And now we're going to the Living Lands, I think it's what it's called, which is a completely different part of the world where we're going to see how those two areas collide. Because, like she says, you're the player in the middle straddling these two worlds. I'm really interested to see where that's going to go here. So, by the way, great question from Co. Um, because from a storytelling perspective, we want to know more because we're huge fans of Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. But we also don't want things spoiled, so this is a great way to ask that question. And she's giving a great answer, by the way.
you know, figuring out where they're going to push it.
Great. Any follow-up comments on that, Zeke? Okay, great.
He
So we
looks
also have
excited.
some.
He's very
No.
excited for Avowed.
So a lot of these questions, by the way, some are going to be like just quick yes no ones, and then
Sure.
others are going to be like what we just heard. That was a fantastic answer. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. So for going into the more kind of from PoE to where we are now, One thing that I know a lot of people absolutely loved is the dive into full voice acting for PoE 2.
Yeah, yeah.
How are we doing with that in Avowed? Is Avowed fully voice acted?
Yes, I mean, so except
Yes.
for the player character, in keeping with the Outer Worlds, your companions, your non-player characters are going to be fully voice acted. Player character lines in dialogue are not spoken.
Yeah, because that's for you.
Great.
Great.
Okay. Another kind of now we kind of get into the mechanical stuff and what we saw. So, a kind of trademark from like Fallout New Vegas, for instance, that Obsidian did so well is a lot of times you would walk into like a dilapidated building, and there wouldn't be an NPC in sight, but there would be a skeleton with his arm at a weird angle, and then maybe another skeleton at the wall. And then if the player spent enough time in there through the environment, they could get the story of what happened. There were
Yeah.
items everywhere. There were these
Environmental
two corpses,
storytelling.
maybe an epic shootout, maybe some notes left behind. One of the things I noticed in the gameplay demos, it didn't seem like there were a lot of items all over the place. It looked there was like some chests, there was some specific locations. How are you guys treating the item quandary in Avowed? Are we going to be seeing stuff all over the place and items, little caches behind corners, or is it more of a centralized in chests on enemies?
So much
on
cat
the
hair
system?
on my sweater.
There's plenty of loot to be
This is a good
found.
question.
We didn't show that in the footage that we showed for Dev Direct, but you might see a bit more of that in a long player, something like that in the future potentially. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff to find, plenty of loot, both as you're exploring, as you're fighting, and everything else.
Okay, so like you come into a camp, you kill the enemies and loot them. You can like go in the tents and there might be random stuff on the ground and stuff around the fireplace and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, whatever makes sense for the setting. We never want players to feel like as someone who can be a very OCD RPG player, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get everything. So, but yeah, like you've got items, you've
Oh,
got
I
drops
do.
on enemies, you've got oh yeah, you know,
Great. So
and
all
yeah,
of
I
it.
mean stuff in the world.
It's not a direct answer to his
Perfect.
question, but
Perfect.
it's an
So
answer.
tell us about this skill system.
Because I feel like he was asking more about interactable objects. Like I found a book, I opened the book, I can flip through the pages of the book, and it's giving me environmental storytelling where it's like, oh, this is a journal entry left behind by somebody, and it tells me this, as well as just items around that you can look at and interact with. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like we'll probably get that, but she also made an emphasis on loot and items, so it might be more told through story things that you pick up. I'm not sure.
So as a PoE, and see, this is where this game starts to get really interesting because first-person immersive sims, kind of like Avowed, Fallout, that kind of stuff, they kind of, especially games like this that are based on CRPGs, they generally go from very complex, deep, customized systems that they then have to streamline and kind of, I don't want to use the word simplify, but kind of change to make more intuitive or more action-oriented games like this. How did you guys approach that with Avowed? Are we going to see kind of like a more parallel system where you're kind of like choosing how you want to do, or are we going to be diving deep into like big skill lines, kind of more vertically?
So you'll have multiple skill trees, and we'll in a future update we'll get into the details of like what all those skills are and kind of what those trees look like.
I
But
can't wait.
it's essentially a classless system. So as the player is progressing, they can mix and match, pick from between those skill trees as they'd like.
Okay, this is what I thought I heard
That
her say
allows
during
them,
the
if they
direct
choose, to spec into
event.
something that's a pretty recognizable fantasy archetype. Like if you want to play, a long distance ranger and have kind of some high damage abilities. Use mostly things like either bow and arrow or an arquebus, things that keep you at a distance. You can absolutely do that, but you're not going to be locked into a specific set of
I
skills
love the
or
potion
a
drinking.
specific set of weapons.
Pop the top
From
and
creating your character.
it's
There's
awesome.
flexibility to respec. So what we're really trying to
Respecking, that's
do
awesome.
is give players a lot of options to customize the character that they want to play, to experiment with different options as they move through the game. So again, you can build some pretty recognizable archetypes.
I gotta pause it here because one of the things they talked about in direct, with the guy who was the director, I think of Combat, um, I think it was the bald guy, right, with the beard. I can't remember his name now off the top of my head. Anyway, I remember them talking about in the direct event and in the extended showcase they did on the Xbox podcast. Um, the idea of like there are like she's saying if you want to go the traditional route of saying I want to be a fighter, I want to be a paladin, I want to be this, that, or the other, you can do that, but they've also left it open and up to where it's a skill based game, which I love this idea. And again, I don't want to take up too much time here because I'm promoting the other video. Stay tuned for that. Um, one of the things I loved, especially in Deadfire, was being able to be a, flintlock pistol, rapier wielding pirate, right? And I loved being that thief character who I carried over from my first playthrough of the first game. And going into this, when I saw the dual wands going off, I was like, because normally I play like a ranger based, stealth based guy, but I'm not afraid to get up and close and personal if I need to. But I always play like a thief character my first time through, and I loved seeing like I could do my traditional thing. I saw the bow that was like good, but then I saw pistol and wands, and I went dual pistols. That's cool, but then I went, oh, I might ditch the sword and do pistol and wand because the idea of like, bam, 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 with the flintlock as a thief like rogue archetype, I was like, I with its stealth and everything else, it just got my juices are just like, nah, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Or build some pretty fun ones. Like I think Gabe mentioned the gunslinging mage
Yes,
in
that's
the
that's
video
exactly what I'm
you're
talking
showing.
about.
Awesome. And a little quick
But
side
like a
follow
mage
up:
thief.
do you skill spec your companions?
So companions do also have skills,
Okay.
and their trees aren't quite as big as the players. They do fall within whatever the particular combat archetype of that companion is,
So if they're a
but within
fighter,
those trees you can choose where to put those points. So your version of Kai, for instance, might be a little bit different from someone else's.
Very cool.
Cool.
Uh, so funny enough, this next question you kind of addressed here a little bit. I'm just going to read it off the page so we can all kind of enjoy this together. Um, so let's see. What was the perspective taken in the weight of the combat? How did your team approach the balance of combat feeling light versus heavy, immersive? So, seeing you guys are still working on that from the sounds of it. You're trying to make the combat feel like very weighty and immersive. But what direction are you guys going with it? What's been kind of the internal debate with that?
this is the guy I was talking about.
So part of it is about
I forget his
providing
name,
variety and distinction based on the kind of weapon you're
but he
using.
does some.
Like,
He's
you
given
don't
some
see any
brilliant discussion
two-handers in this
points.
demo, but like if you're using a big two-handed, sword or hammer or something, it's absolutely going to feel a lot heavier than what you're seeing in this video. The swings are going to be slower but more impactful. It's going to take more stamina to use. It's going to feel very different. What you've got here is a one-handed sword, which is, kind of a pretty classic middle of the road option, pretty balanced. And then the wands, which we also see a lot of in this
Yes,
demo, are
wands.
probably, along with daggers, our lightest, fastest, snappiest weapons. So those by design have kind of a very quick, fluid, snappy sort of feel to them. But again, it's all about giving the player options that suit both
I
whatever
think
play
most players'
style they
complaints are coming
prefer,
from the animation
mechanically,
when you hit
tactically,
the
but
enemy.
also just
That's what a
whatever
lot of
lets
people
them
are
build
talking
their
about.
fantasy of
Which
their
I don't
their
have a problem
character
with
in
the way
this
they've done it
world.
here. Essentially, what they've done is they've given sort of like the generic blood splash. And this could be, like I said, this could just be footage that hasn't been completely polished yet. They're adding better animations, which she has suggested is taking place. I think that this is already, for me personally, I'm fine with this because I don't need it to be, extremely realistic. I'm just having fun, like as a gamer. So, but I mean, any polish is going to be good polish. But I didn't have a problem with
Cool.
this.
Also had an interesting question because I was talking to a member of my community, and they actually, when I mentioned that I was going to ask about this, they wanted to know about the reverse because for them it was an accessibility thing. They were
Hmm.
wondering, is there going to be any weight on the player getting hit? Like if a player gets hit by a big weapon, is it going to move his camera and shake him around, or are all hits? Is there going to be any reaction to the player on getting hit with different levels of
That's
strength,
just an
or is it all just going to
animation,
be
though.
straight kind of
Yeah, it does depend on the type of attack and the weight of that attack. We've got some heavier enemy attacks, like you kind of see the red circle on that Zarp chieftain there when he's winding up for a really big unblockable. We've got some heavier ones that can knock the player down, push them back a little bit, but obviously lighter hits as well.
Yep.
very cool, very cool. Some other just rapid fire one. Is there a new game plus on release or planned?
We're
And
not
this kind of leads into a follow up. Like, are you guys planning on there being an extensive end game or an ending?
so we're not discussing endings or new game plus just yet.
Okay, gotta wait.
Perfect.
Cool.
Now this was an interesting thing for me as an old school PoE player because I vividly remember like looking through all the races and stuff. But we heard recently that we can be a human or an elf, I believe, that was on there. So one of the questions I have is how meaningful is the character's race class selection at the start of the game? Is it like more cosmetic so the player doesn't have to, have any concern over it? Or is there going to be like a lot of changes and differences between their character race selection?
Sure. So there, we'll get into more of the details about our character creation system a little bit later. But there are some decisions you can make about your character at the very beginning that are going to have some mechanical impacts as well as some role play impacts. One thing you might have noticed in this video is when the player's talking to Naoki near the end of the quest, there's an option with a particular icon next to it, and that's background locked. So that means because the player picked a particular background on character creation, we're assuming that they have certain aptitudes, experiences, etc., that let them, speak to what they're saying right then.
Right,
So,
but I
again,
think he's more
players of
specifically
our
wanting to know how
players of
many
Pillars of
races are there going to
Eternity
be.
will
Nod,
recognize that
nod,
there were
nudge,
various
nudge.
vectors
But
that you could
also,
choose in
yeah, how's
character
that going to play
creation
into
that
the
would
overall
sometimes open
experience?
these opportunities up.
It's just
Um,
expanding dialogue based
yeah.
on your
So some of them
starting
are going to
choices.
be about, again,
This spell
creating the
looks awesome.
character who kind of looks and feels the way you want them to, and then some of them will, open certain doors for role playing for you.
Cool. And a quick actually follow up because you mentioned something that's not on my questions here, but I'm very interested in. Are there any skills that are non-combat, and does any skill play into dialogue stuff in the game, like a persuasion skill or anything like that?
So skills as you're thinking of them on the like on the skill trees are about combat gameplay, that sort of thing. They're not, those in particular are not going to be tied to dialogue options.
Cool.
I think, like, personally as an RPG player, one thing that I always find a little bit frustrating sometimes when I'm building or specking up a character, and again, this is purely a personal reaction, is feeling like I have to choose between a character who is, effective and fun in gameplay,
Versus
or
one
effective
who's,
and has more role play
yeah,
options
the
in
bard.
dialogue.
And
And there are
I
obviously a
gotta
lot of
pause this
really
here because so many people in Baldur's Gate 3, that's one of the reasons many people went with a bard, because it was like, I want the best of both worlds. I want to be able to do all the conversations, win all the conversations, and I also want to be good at all these things. You don't need to necessarily pick between the two if you do your game in a different way. So I like the fact that she's talking about this right here, because I much prefer sort of, here's, these classes are really good at these classes are really good at this, but that works very well when you have like six in a party or five in a party, four in a party, whatever. But here, where they're simplifying it because we want it to be a slightly different experience, it makes total sense, because this isn't really about a party based game. Even though you will have companions, it's mostly that single player RPG experience, so streamlining that process a bit.
ways to tackle that. But for us, that means, yeah, those skill trees as you're leveling up and progressing are really about how you want to play the game and what sorts of abilities you want in the
Active
battlefield.
abilities
Cool.
as opposed to
I'm a fan of that.
okay, yeah,
I think I'm like my
I mean,
biggest self.
it makes it a lot more focused for sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so just to be clear, is there any out of combat skill or customization, or is it pretty much all customization and stuff is around combat? And if it's too early to answer that, that's fine.
I think the answer to that is a little more complicated than I can get
Yes.
into
Okay.
Yeah,
just
yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect. No
I
problem.
totally get
Another,
why
you probably can't answer this, but
she
gonna ask
answered it
anyway.
that way.
How long is a main quest playthrough compared to 100%? And you can use things like 50% to 100%. Like, or if I'm gonna do a full, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can in a single run. Is this gonna be like 10% longer than a straight beginning to end playthrough, or like 50% longer?
So the best thing I could point you to is the Outer Worlds. In terms of the overall scope of the game, kind of the play time, the play space, and
That's
also that
fair.
approach to, yep, you can focus on the main, the critical path, but you can also broaden and fully explore your side quests, little adventure zones, all that good stuff. I think that's a pretty good model for what to expect in terms of scope.
Wasn't Outer Worlds like
Perfect.
40, 50 hours for main, and then
Is
like
there
you
a
could do like a
crafting
100
system?
hour?
And if so, will it be
I don't
optional or
remember.
mandatory?
So there's definitely, what I can say right now is we do have a weapon upgrade system, and while it is technically not mandatory, players will definitely be at an advantage for using it. So yeah, it's in there. Highly recommend it. It'll make you a lot more
I
effective on
like
the
that. You
battlefield.
technically don't have to use a weapon in Elden Ring, but we do provide them if you'd like to.
quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand.
Yeah,
You can solo her, yeah.
Yeah.
You could go punch down Millennia. So another rapid fire one. Any plans for any type of player housing base or base building?
They've done that in both their
No
other
base
games.
building. Sort of the base that follows you around through the game is your party camp that you share with your companions, but it's not going to be a base that you're building up over the course of the game.
No, up. Okay, cool. So what types of difficulty levels can we expect from this game at the beginning? And will there be any that are unlocked by doing
So
like
players,
playthroughs?
sure. So players can expect, again, if they're familiar with a lot of our previous games, we often have something that's, a handful of difficulties on a range from story time mode, which is, very easy, to Path of the Damned, where it's extremely punishing. You can expect a similar range of difficulty options here.
Awesome.
Cool.
Another quick thing. So we saw in a lot of the gameplay preview that the mage, there seemed to be like some dual wield wand action and things like that. I remember vividly during that, somebody in my chat being like, "Oh man, I want to play a mage, but I hate wands." And just asking for
that
him.
was Co's
Can you be?
Yeah, he's being insincere.
Well, I'm just wondering. Can you? We noticed that there were also, especially in some of the previews, some like incredibly flashy, big-looking spells that use like grimoires or something of that nature. Can you play a mage and not use?
Well, the grimoires.
You don't have to use a wand. Again, it's a classless system, so there's nothing that's ever going to lock you into using a particular
It's
weapon
different than
or particular set of
spells,
abilities,
if that makes
or lock
sense.
you
The
out of
grimoire is
using
always for
certain
the spells in
weapons.
the
So
first two games.
if you're saying, I want to build a mage style character, I want to, find the most powerful spells, and I want to either, you could be a battle mage, cast spells, and wield a melee weapon. You could be the gunslinging mage Gabe talks about. You can use a grimoire. You have a lot of options there, but you don't have to use wands if you don't like them.
And quick follow up to that, because I'm super interested in this kind of like whole thing. Because one big thing that systems like this tend to run into is you can be whatever you want, but then your character will have like a list of base stats that only makes him like really good at like one or two things. Do you guys have like an independent stat system with your skill system, or is it basically just built around the skill system itself? For instance, could I potentially have a stat rollout if it's available that makes me really bad at being a spellcaster, no matter how much I skill into it?
Right. I can't speak to the specifics of that system just yet, but what I will say is, our goal when we're building these systems up, and I think this has been consistent for us on Pillars and Outer Worlds
I
as
was a
well,
little
is
confused by his
we
question
really
too,
don't
but
want to,
he's just wanting to know if there's a
create
stat sheet.
systems that
I
players,
guess.
where players are going to like spec themselves into a corner if they don't like pull out a spreadsheet and figure out all the gotchas and pitfalls. Like, there's no secret formula players have to figure out. We really just want to give them a rich set of
Fun.
options so
Just
they can
here,
create
go
a
have
character
fun.
who's really fun to play.
I like she
Cool.
just said fun. That's a big
Awesome.
word. I like fun.
How are the boss fights going to be in this game? Is it going to be like an enemy with more hit points that's slightly bigger than the others, or are we doing like set pieces?
So I'm sorry to say this again. I can't talk
And
about
if you could please
that
list all
just
the boss
yet.
fights and their
By
sequels.
name, alphabetical order. Yeah, no, so the one thing I can say is, what you're seeing in the demo, kind of the way we're approaching our combats broadly is we're trying to create a strong range of different unit types with, different behaviors to, keep our encounters fresh, and also give players good reasons to switch up their strategies, maybe try the alternate loadout that they have equipped, or, explore the skill tree instead of finding one thing that works and using it every time. So yeah, it's about not finding anything that's gonna trick the player, or again, punish them if they haven't spec'd into the one thing that they're actually going to need to beat this encounter or beat this character. But just having a good variety of enemies and behaviors where players with different loadouts can approach them in slightly different ways, but constantly feel challenged to try something a little bit different.
That's a very vague answer. It works.
This is one of those questions that you can, again, stop at the beginning. I've got a few of these, you can tell. I was for the record, I made this list of questions expecting many to be unanswered, so don't think I'm completely crazy here.
Yeah.
Does this game feature any direct connection, non-spoilers of course, to previous PoE titles? And what I mean by that is people ask streamers all the time when a game like this comes out, if I want to fully enjoy this game, do you
Should I
recommend playing
play
the
the
previous
first
game?
two, which is the next video I'm doing?
Is it,
I
would you say that PoE 1 and 2 are required reading?
They're not required reading. If you enjoy Pillars and Deadfire, you like that style of gameplay, absolutely pick them up. Many of us on the Avowed team worked on those games personally, so we still have a lot of affection for them. But also, if that's not your style of game, or if you've got a long backlog and you're just not going to get to them in time, that's fine. You don't have to know anything about Pillars 1 or 2 to
That's good to
enjoy
know.
Avowed.
That's the takeaway we needed
Cool.
right there. Okay, great. Perfect. 18, another big one. Are there any mini games in Avowed?
There are no mini games.
Okay, good to know. How does time pass in Avowed? Is there a day-night system, a wait system? And as a follow-up, is there any disadvantages or advantages in playing at night versus day? Any abilities that rely on the difference?
We do have a day-night system. It's not going to affect gameplay. It's really about giving the world kind of a sense of,
Cosmetics.
life, passage of time, and there's some environments that look, especially beautiful, at night when a lot of the colors pop, like some of the kind of the bioluminescent fungus that you might have seen. So it lends a lot of life to the world, but it's not tied to gameplay.
Okay, awesome.
Gabe,
And
that's
finally,
his
my list of
name.
questions here.
Gabe
I'm getting great
Paramo.
for time.
Paramo?
What
Paramo?
type of movement is going to be available for the player? Is all of Avowed going to take place on foot? Are there any specific skill lines that are going to give like the player actual movement speed and travel buffs, or how are you guys approaching the movement quandary?
So you're not going to have any mounts, if that's part of what you're asking about. You're going to be moving around on foot. As you can see, even in the demo for Dev Direct, there's there's some abilities that do affect your movement, like charge is a really great gap closer that'll move you across a moderate distance pretty quickly. So players can expect to see a few things like that.
Just out of curiosity, are there any skills that are like persistent movement plus like forever? Like, is it going to be the kind of thing where I have like one of my loadouts is for combat and the other is for like running around fast?
There might be some pieces of gear that could help you out with that.
Oh, okay.
And some
Gear
real
confirmed.
quick additional question here about this loadout system because I'm really interested about this. Can you instantly switch loadouts whenever you want?
Yes, yeah, whatever. So you'll have you'll have your loadouts kind of already, equipped on your character
Predetermined, yeah.
through inventory, but yeah, anything you already have, you can swap between very quickly.
And this is weapons, equipment, and skills.
It is weapons. Yeah, like your on hand and your offhand.
And then, but then the weapons, like if I was using a pistol and a wand, could my
Yes.
other skill be a two-hand sword?
Yeah, it could. hmm
And I can switch those during combat?
I mean,
Like,
you might
can
have to wait
basically,
till
I'm
you're
wondering,
not like mid-swing, but you're not locked into something just because you're in an active encounter. So,
That's
like
what.
oh,
if
that was
you're
my
fighting,
question.
Yeah.
yeah, if you're fighting a group of enemies and you start off
Switch
and
on
you
the
say,
fly.
I want to take my bow and arrow and try to, like maybe take down these two guys from a distance, and then the rest of the encounter aggroes and they're rushing at you, and you say, okay, now I want to switch to my melee weapon. You can switch to that set with the press of a button and be ready to attack however you want.
And
That's good to
so
know.
I could literally run in with guns blazing, like run towards someone, like blat 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 blat, and then right when I get in their face, instantly switch to a two-hand weapon and start cutting them up with a two-hand weapon.
Yes.
Again, you just gotta wait for the animation for your character to pull it out, but yes, it is very quick. It's
That's
the press of a
that's
button.
dope.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
Yeah.
that's Co's fancy.
I feel like that's going to be a
gonna
game
open up
changer
a
for people
lot
streaming
of
this
things.
game.
What,
Yeah.
That's wild.
Carrie, for you, what do you find yourself leaning towards in terms of the weapons that you're finding more interesting than not to play for your own playthroughs?
So more recently, I've definitely become a fan of wands. Like a wand and a grimoire is great because you've got like again the really
I
quick
like the idea of it.
snappy damage, and then a set of really powerful spells on hand. I've also been a big fan of two-handed pistols. They've got a really nice punchy feel, and you feel like Yosemite Sam just kind of running around. Like, and if you time it right, you take one shot, and while you're reloading this one, you can take another shot with the other one. And again, if you get the timing down, you can make sure
Oh,
that you've,
that's pretty awesome.
basically always got a shot ready to go.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, what is next for the team? Just pushing towards 1.0, towards gold. Is that kind of the big goal now at the moment?
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember when does it fully? Have you guys said anything? Any years? I don't think months are out there. But what is launch? If you've said anything.
I think it's just the end of this year.
We're launching later this year.
Okay. All right.
No
That's
launch date
the
yet.
tagline. I don't want to get you in trouble with PR. Or anything.
I think we were pretty safe there. I think that was
Oh
already out.
Yeah.
That's already out there.
Yeah, that was from the direct.
Well, Ko, any other questions? We actually made really good time for this.
No,
So,
I just want to say thank you so much, Carrie. It has been awesome. I think many of us are just we're so excited for this.
I'm definitely excited for this. This is potentially my game of the year. Now this is stiff competition because I've also got Indiana Jones and I've got Star Wars Outlaws. Like, there's some good games coming out this year, so we'll see. But I mean, this is definitely a contender for me personally. I love the first two games, and I can't wait for this. So I'm excited about this. Hopefully, you're excited about this. Make sure to follow along on the Dropped Frames podcast. Thanks to them for getting Carrie on. Thanks for Carrie for answering all these questions so candidly. If you're not already doing so, make sure to stick around and follow me for more stuff about Avowed and all their socials if you want really deep dives. Go watch the videos, watch the trailers. It's looking awesome. I'm going to try to squeeze a Deadfire playthrough in this summer. I don't know when yet, but it'll be this summer. We'll see where it fits in. Daily streams here and on Twitch. Lots of different games are played here, so check out the playlist. Join the Discord. Get a copy of my latest book, which is a fantasy novel like Dragonlance Forgotten Realms. Worked on it with my brother and my wife. Check that out. Links are down below. See you in the next video or live stream. Stay safe, everybody. Happy gaming.